What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Tuesday edition of Back Your Play with Q. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones. As we continue our look around the NFL with the season among us, we break down the AFC West. Our good friend, our NFL correspondent, insider Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us on a Tuesday edition of BYP. We got the Hall of Fame game coming up as well. Jets and the Browns play the under. I'll just give you guys a little insight on that one as well. But always good to talk to you, my friend. And hey, listen, the AFC West, I think a lot of people believe this might be a division that is definitely the Chiefs' division to lose, so to speak, but different Denver team. We don't know what's going to go on with the Raiders. And then we got the Chargers. So we'll start with the aforementioned Kansas City Chiefs, the defending Super Bowl champs, sitting there at minus 180. I mean, look, we know they have weapons. I still think they're not where they should be from a wide receiver standpoint. You still have Patrick Mahomes, a perennial MVP. You have a very good head coach and Hall of Fame coach, Andy Reid. We know about the tight end and Kelsey and the likes, go on and on and on. But Lloyd, what bothers me and troubles me about this team is that the pass rush, there's major concerns. I mean, they were not able, if you look at that playoffs, quarterbacks were lighting up against them. And then, of course, Jalen Hurts had a big performance in the Super Bowl for the Philadelphia Eagles in the game that the Eagles lost late. So where are you at right now with Kansas City? You believe that this team has the build, the makeup to defend their Super Bowl championship and go back to back?
Well, Q, they're the winners from Super Bowl 57. So obviously they're the leaders in the clubhouse going into the season. But as you talked about, there are a couple areas that kind of, there's some question marks there, particularly safety. They say goodbye to Tyrann Mathieu in 2021, and the guys they replaced him with, Justin Reed, Brian Cook, Juan Thornhill. Are these guys the answer? So you worry about the safety position. As you talk about, the Eagles were able to move the football down the field on them pretty easily. They have another situation in terms of contract. Chris Jones, he may not be happy in terms of the middle of the defensive line. He is their linchpin on defense, and they're going to have to keep him happy. And then on the offensive side, yes, Patrick Mahomes got hit a lot more than you'd like him to. And then he loses Orlando Brown. He's going to the Cincinnati Bengals. They bring in Donovan Smith coming over from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Is he a guy ready to control that edge for them? So, some question marks there. But obviously, when you have Pat Mahomes, obviously it's going to be a situation where it's going to alleviate a lot of your problems. But, interesting team. But right now, yes, I think with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, you have to put them at the top spot. And let's not forget, Eric Bieniemy going to Washington. Is that a big loss?
Right.
We're going to have to see how that plays out.
Yeah, that's a good point. They opened at minus 160. It's now at 180 to win the Super Bowl plus 600. I mean, they've had their way in the AFC East. The next team that's actually played them well, pretty much gives them a fight every 60 minutes, is the Chargers. They just gave Herbert the big contract. This was a team that a lot of people think, all right, are we going to take that next step? We saw last year finally get into the playoffs. We know that's a franchise quarterback. They got Williams and Allen. They had the first round draft pick in Johnson. The O-line troubles me a little bit, but by all accounts, it seems to be fixed. This is a team that I think on paper you would think 10-7, 11-6. Kansas City maybe 13 wins, 12 wins. Okay, but are the Chargers in play at plus 325 and sitting right at plus 300 right now to not only make the playoffs, but more importantly, to dethrone Kansas City and then win the AFC West? Can you see the Chargers being the only competition to Kansas City in that division?
Well, I think all these teams are going to be very competitive in division. So we always talk about you need that 4-2 or higher record in your division, and I think these games are very competitive. These teams do not like each other, and when you talk about the Chargers, a lot of expectations on his team. Brandon Staley been there a couple years now. Yes, they finally break through last year at 10-7, and they get to the playoffs and lose a shootout game to the Jaguars, 31-30. But there's got to be some more maturation on his team in terms of Justin Herbert, their quarterback. They invested a lot in him, and there's a lot of weapons around him. So they bring Kellen Moore coming over from the Dallas Cowboys? Can he bring that explosiveness that sometimes that offense had? Because Lombardi, who was their offense coordinator, he just was not getting the job done. Team kind of, a lot of weeks were kind of struggling to put up points. So, last year they finished 13th in terms of scoring, about 23 points per game. And then defensively, they were not even in the middle of the pack. They finished 21st. They're allowing 22.6 points per game. So defensively, yes, they're always going to point to injuries and Bosa was a little banged up. Derwin James, they're all pro safety. He was beat up too. But they got to do a good job in terms of stopping teams. And that's what Brandon Staley, that was his calling card. Let's not forget he's a defensive guy by nature. So this team, they should be in the mix, but they got some work to do.
Yeah, they didn't get a ton of quarterback pressure last year, as you alluded to, only 40 sacks. They didn't have one player at all in double digits. I mean, Fox had 6.5. They had some injuries, all, at ill-time injuries, if you will. They rely on Boza. They relied on that secondary. Offensively, you look at Herbert, almost 5,000 yards. Eckler close to 1,000 yards on the ground, average about 4.5. He's kind of a Swiss Army knife of a running back. They've got some really good wide receivers. I was pulling up their schedule, and I just think there are certain teams that you're going to know within the first month of the season. So they had their home opener against Miami, new look Dolphins. Then they go on the road, and these are two, hit or miss type of games, right? You got Tennessee. We believe we know who's going to be under center. Then you've got Minnesota on the road, and then you had that first AFC West contest against the Raiders. They get a very early bye this year. They get a bye in week 5, man. That's early. And then they got Dallas, Kansas City, Chicago, the Jets, Detroit. So aside from maybe Chicago, they're going to get tested. I mean, this team, best case scenario, come out of the gate 3-1 going into the bye.
Yeah, Q. And as I said, a lot of expectations on this roster because they have players in their prime like Joey Bosa. He's 27, but then you have Khalil Mack on the other side of that line. He's 32, and you start wondering, okay, is the window closing on guys like that? But and they bring over Eric Kendricks coming from Vikings, and they have Asante Samuel Jr. defending cornerback. So there's names everywhere on this roster. So it's time for them to put up or shut up. And Herbert in particular, you talk about he's always got the fantasy football stats, but he's got to produce some wins, particularly in the playoffs. Now, what I do like about this squad is their offensive line has had that consistency built around Rashawn Slater, that great left tackle that got out of Northwestern. They bring Zion Johnson coming over as well, and they have one of the best centers in Corey Linsley. So very good group up front, and all the pieces are there, but they got to put it together. And like you were saying, they need to put that heat on Kansas City because Kansas City each season it seemed to kind of run roughshod over its division.
I wonder how much of that horrible loss in the playoffs. I mean, they were up, what, 27 against Jacksonville? I mean, they were up 27 points, and it was 27-7 going into the locker room. They got outscored 24-3 second half. Jacksonville made the adjustments. Lawrence played brilliantly. And again, they could not convert the Chargers on third down. They couldn't get any stops. How much of that do we put on that offense? I wonder how much of that is to carry over into the season. When you lose a game like that, when you blow a playoff lead of that magnitude, sometimes it bleeds in to the next season. So it's yet to be seen how they rebound from that, but they have to get out to that fast start. Again, Tuesday edition of BYP. Rich Quinones is here. Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us from our good friends over at Plate Against Sports and Scoots Liquors. All right, the Raiders. I look at this team right now, 4-13, 5-12, 2 playoffs in 7 seasons. You swipe Carr for Jimmy Garoppolo. I have a feeling they have talent, but I almost get the sense this is a season where it completely crumbles for the Raiders. And I'm going to tell you why. Because you swap Carr for Garoppolo, and as I said, you've got some nice talent in Crosby. You've got wide receivers and Adams and Myers and Renfro, and they lose Waller to the Giants. Their defense, to me, is going to be a major issue. I think teams are going to be able to get up and down the field against them. And as much as I like Garoppolo, I mean, Carr to me is a much better quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo. So you're taking a step back at one of the most marquee positions. I don't know. I think this is the year where the Raiders, you look at them and they're a 4 or 5 win team. I don't see them improving because the defense scares the hell out of me.
Yeah, too, and then Mark Davis, we'll see if he's like his father, is he ready to pull the trigger? He's going to make some more changes, or is he going to sit back and kind of be patient? So that's going to be a very interesting thing. Their owner there, and they bought into the Patriot way. They bring Dave Ziegler coming over from the Patriots.
Yep.
Who's their de facto GM, and then you have Josh McDaniels who gave him the keys to the kingdom. He's their head coach, and it's time for him to put up or shut up as well. So this team, some expectations there, and they're always competitive. They like to play the Chiefs very tough, and they were in particularly that early season game
Yep.
last year where it was a back and forth game. Mahomes pulls it out at the end, but they got to do more. And you worry about Jimmy Garoppolo and his health. Obviously, the Niners, they said enough's enough. He has his foot injury. Is he going to be able to come back from that? And then you have Josh Jacobs and his whole contract situations. He's been franchised. And, yeah, we talked about Saquon clearing his mess up with the Giants, but Josh Jacobs is still sitting on the sidelines and he's kind of holding out for the Raiders. And he led the NFL in rushing last season, but they're going to need him. And there's question marks there. And then you talk about, yes, they have Devontae Adams at the receiver position, but what else do they have if they don't have Jacobs? Because obviously, you talk about Waller going into the Giants. That's a big loss, and their offensive line's kind of been a revolving door as well. So, a lot of interesting storylines here, but I kind of would have to agree with you in terms of is his team built to last? And I think they're probably going to finish behind the Broncos, who we'll talk about in a minute. So we'll find out week one, Q. They're at the Broncos. Then week two, they're at Buffalo. Then they play Pittsburgh. Then they're at the Chargers and then they have Green Bay. So that's to start their season. Very tough schedule for the Raiders, and you're right. You wonder the Super Bowl is going to be there, but I'm pretty sure we safe to say that the Raiders won't be the team representing the AFC there.
Plus 1,300 to win the division. I mean, the best odds in that division right now. You look at the Super Bowl odds, Kansas City at plus 600. I mean, look, no one's putting any shekels on Denver or the Raiders. You mentioned the loss to Kansas City 30-29. They had to collapse late. They lost to the Chargers 24-19, lost to Arizona 29-23 in OT, lost to the Titans 24-22, defeated Denver 32-23, lost to Kansas City 30-29. I bring up those scores 1-4. Maybe you get a game here and there if you can close it out. I just don't see it. I just don't like the vibe of this team. And then we round it out with the Denver Broncos. And you can argue Denver had the biggest acquisition of the offseason with Sean Payton. Now, we talk about the Raiders losing close games. Denver lost 12 games. 3 of those were in OT. 2 of those were by 1 point. They lost 2 games to the Chiefs. They played them well throughout, combined 9 points. I mean, think about that. And to me, their tone of the season was set when they lost to Seattle to open the season 17-16. Russell Wilson had close to 350 yards passing. They had that 4th and 5 situation inside the Seattle 50, and they elected to go for that long field goal. And to me, that was pretty much the lost confidence in Hackett, the lost confidence in Russell Wilson, and it kind of spiraled out of control. I don't see this team winning many games in the AFC West, and I can see maybe they figure out a way to get to 8-9 wins. I mean, look, when you look at 12 games, 3 of those lost in OT, 2 more losses by 1 point, and 0-2 against the Chiefs, 9 points combined, with play calling, with a Sean Payton over a Nathaniel Hackett from a play calling standpoint, made a substantial amount of difference in those contests.
And it's pretty topical that we're bringing this up. Obviously, the news all week has been, Sean Payton taking that unusual shot at another coach them out, Nathaniel Hackett, how bad he did a job last season, and them firing back as well as Aaron Rodgers trying to protect his now offense coordinator in Hackett. But when I look at what happened with the Broncos last year, it was just a disappointing situation. I don't know if it's Russell Wilson not clicking with Hackett or what it was, but this team finished 32nd in the league, dead last in terms of scoring points. So they only scored 287 points, and they only which is 16, basically we'll give them 17 points per game. that's just not going to get it done. Their defense was middle of the road, 14th. They allowed 21 per game. And you talk about these close contests, and they just weren't getting what they wanted in terms of Russell Wilson and usually what he brings to the table. So, um, interesting the pieces they brought around him. Obviously Javonte Williams
Yep.
is coming off that big ACL injury, and he also tore his LCL as well. So they got to kind of wait on him. They bring Samaje Perine over from the Bengals. He's a thumper running back, and again in training camp they lose Patrick. He's going to be out again this season. He has an Achilles injury. Unfortunately, he had the ACL the year before. So a lot of flux with this group. Yes, they have some talent with guys like Jerry Jeudy and um, some of those other pieces. Their tight end, I like him as well. But you're right. Russell Wilson's got to definitely step it up. And I think a big thing is he's going to have to try to run the football some more. I know he's getting a little bit older, but there were situations where he could have moved to change and picked up first downs, and he kind of was reticent to run the football. I don't know if it's because of his age or he's a little banged up, but he's got to get back to letting Russ cook mode. So interesting team.
I think it had to do a lot with the offensive line. He was sacked 55 times. I mean, they gave up the most sacks in the NFL last year. So I get where he's going to be gun shy. I'm just wondering, he never fully clicked offensively, right? It never meshed with Hackett calling the plays and Russell Wilson. What makes us think that first season under Sean Payton, it's going to click, right? I mean, how much of the offense are they going to, tailor towards his strengths? I mean, case in point, last year, you took the ball out of his hands, right? I don't believe Sean Payton's going to do that. Analytics say you go for it on fourth down. Sean Payton's been around the block. He's been an aggressive head coach. I don't know if a new head coach is going to transform Russell Wilson into quarterback that he was 5-6 years ago. I personally, I think this is who he is right now. I think he's a quarterback that got hit a lot. I don't see him putting up those, type of numbers, 35-7. I don't see that. Even a couple of years ago, 40-13, then he went 25-6. But you started to see he had stretches of games where he was horrible decision making. And then last year he had stretches of games where 2 picks, 3 picks, 2 picks, 1 pick. How much of this, if we're looking at this team and saying they can win 9-10 games, do we look at Peyton as plus 3 games, plus 4 games, give them at least 3 more wins because now they have Sean Payton?
Right, and he brings that former Super Bowl winner cachet. But we talked about this before. That was at the height of Drew Brees' abilities, and did he kind of carry Sean Payton to that title? Because too often his Saints kind of were underachieving team, finished 79 over and over again, and he's coming there. The Walton family bought this team. They have that big Walmart money, and they have high expectations for this group. They have George Payton there, who's now a couple of years as a general manager, and now you got Sean Payton there, and he's bringing in, he yes, he brings that winning resume, but he has that attitude that
Yeah.
goes with it. So he's going to give Russell Wilson all the chances he can to succeed, but then you wonder, will he start to point fingers at his quarterback if he kind of struggles? So this is another team that has some names on it. We talked about Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton at the receiver position, Greg Dulcich at the tight end, and then their offensive line, as you're saying, was kind of little Swiss cheeses. So they bring over Mike McGlinchey coming over from the Niners. We'll see if he's able to help defensively. They have some all-pro type guys too as well. Patrick Surtain, the second at corner, he's did a very nice job. And then they're hoping for Randy Gregory, who came over from Dallas Cowboys and got hurt, that he can help in terms of the pass rush. So, this team's got some names, but there's high expectations. Got to do a good job first and foremost in division, because these are going to be tough rivalry games.
Yep.
They host the Raiders to start with, then they host Washington, then they're at Miami, then they're at Chicago, and then the big one, they're going to face the New York Jets with Nathaniel Hackett, and you have all this bulletin board material going back and forth in week 5. So a lot, some games that are winnable there, but there are some tough ones as well. And then I'll throw in week 6, they're at Kansas City. That's really going to tell us what this team can do.
Yeah, listen, offensive line play. Kansas City's probably got the deepest. The Chargers I mentioned, you got Lindsey, you've got Slater. They got a couple second-year guys as well. The kid Johnson, they seem to be fixed. But then Denver and the Broncos, I think, had the biggest question marks. And talk about some of the injuries, right? Denver already lost two players, so they're getting hit with that injury bug already, which is never it's never a good thing. They lost to Kid Patrick, torn Achilles in practice, and then they lost Hamler stepping away from that heart issue. So let's go quickly around the league. So I guess the real big story, again, I just feel like the running backs, right? I mean, we still don't know what's going on with Dalvin Cook, right? Everyone's trying to think, all right, where's he going to sign? Where's it going to be at the end of the day? I mean, now we're creeping in August. Do you get the sense that a deal with the Jets will get done soon?
I talked to a couple guys, and you talked about there's two running backs. Dalvin Cook, he visited with the Jets, and they seem to be the leader in the clubhouse, and I think they're trying to work some things out. But they have some money issues there now. They got a lot of big contracts they're trying to work in, and they signed a lot of free agents. Joe Douglas is there doing a good job, but I think that's where he probably will end up. And then you had Ezekiel Elliott, another back looking for a job. He was in with the Patriots, and they seemed to like him. So they said Belichick's trying to work some things out in terms of their salary cap situation. So hopefully we'll get some movement on these backs. But we know some of these guys don't even want to go to training camp. But they're still going to need at least a week or so to get ready for football shape. Obviously they're not going to put a veteran guy like that in these preseason games where you got some guy that's a special teamer or a sixth round draft pick trying to make a name for himself, trying to hit one of these guys. So they're not going to allow reps in these preseason games, but once they sign, they're going to need to get some opportunities.
How's it going to end, if you will, for the Colts and Taylor, right? Because he had arguably the best rushing season statistically, pardon me, in Colts history, in franchise history. So they're kind of hitting that cycle right now because his contract isn't up until the end of the season. You've got, again, which I really don't understand, Irsay just kind of coming out and making the comments that he made. You got a running back that has a desire to have a long-term contract, but then you have an owner that basically took a shot, at the bad faith running back complaints, right, on Twitter. I'm sorry, on X, formerly known as Twitter. I still can't get over that, but whatever. So, I mean, if I die tonight and Jonathan Taylor is out of the league, no one's going to miss us. The league goes on. We know that. The National Football League rolls on. It doesn't matter who comes and who goes, and it's a privilege to be part of it. So that's after Taylor's agent responded. Irsay said that to James Boyd of The Athletic. Really? What are we doing? I mean, what the frig are you talking about? I mean,
some of these owners, they need to take a page from Robert Kraft or some of these guys that have won. The Hunt family, they're winning. They're not talking in the media and taking shots at their own guys. Obviously, this is going to get very contentious, very ugly, and we've seen this before with other running backs where the bridge may be burned. I'll put it that way. Will he really want to come back there? Will he try to trade him? It's just an ugly situation. And you got Taylor who's injured. He's doing a hold-in type thing or something. We don't know what's going on there. He's obviously not on the same page with the team. You got a new head coach coming in there, Steichen, and he doesn't even really know the player. And it's just going to get real ugly. And then hopefully Irsay can try to smooth the roads, but he's not helping himself. You don't want your owner out there taking shots at players and just making things get uglier. Just maybe keep it in the back room. That's what the agents are for. Do it in the back room, do it over the telephone, and let those guys work out those types of things.
Yeah, it seems like the bridge has been burned, right? Because the uncomfortable truth is that he's got no recourse, no leverage. I mean, if you decide I'm going to hold out, that's $50,000 a day fine. So,
yeah, when you're under contract, that's a lot of money, Q. When you're not important. You talk about Zach Martin, the offensive guard for the Dallas Cowboys. He's been holding out, and I've heard he's lost over $250,000 already in terms of fines. So when you're under contract, it's a tough situation. And Taylor, he's getting his back up, and he's getting very upset as well. And it does not look like it's going to end well. And then you have a team that has a rookie quarterback, a rookie coach. I know we talked about the NFC South a couple of weeks ago, but they may be treading water, going down real quick.
Yeah. We technically kick it off Thursday with the Hall of Fame game. Jets and the Browns. Jets are laying 1.5. And then we'll wrap it up. Rodgers, now everyone's doing the Will Smith, keep my quarterback, keep my coach, keep my wife, keep my husband, keep my kid, keep my boss, keep whomever out of your mouth. And listen, I like Peter Schrager, kind of threw him a couple softballs with that interview. I get it, kind of led the horse to the water, if you will. But I mean, look, Sean Payton walked back to comments. He sounds like a jackass clown. We all know that. It is what it is. He probably realized I shouldn't have said that. I took a swipe at another, guy in the coaching fraternity. It's Aaron Rodgers' guy. Does that mean Aaron Rodgers is going to go out and light the world on fire and put up 500 passing yards that game? I don't know. But I always find it interesting where, the Jets, who did not want to be on Hard Knocks, they're basically justifying why they should be on Hard Knocks, right? Because it's all Super Bowl or bust. It's Aaron Rodgers. It's a comment this, the comment that. It's players, braggadocious, cocky. The freaking guy can walk on water. He's a duck on a pond. So for all this, there's no way you should. Well, it's almost like you're feeding into this now and this narrative. And this is why they're going to stick the camera in your face.
They're the show now. Right now, until the games start, this is the show. Everybody's going to be talking about them. I think the debut episode will be coming up soon, and I'm sure they're going to have all the stuff on Aaron Rodgers and Woody Johnson, who's the owner there, and Joe Douglas has done a really good job coming over from the Eagles as their general manager. I'm sure they'll have some of him. A lot of names on this roster, and in terms of betting, though, I'd probably say bet on the Browns in that Hall of Fame game because they probably have more to prove. You know what I mean? They'll probably leave Watson and some of the other starters out there a little longer. The Jets. Rodgers will probably go out there, hand the ball off a couple of times, and he'll be done for the night.
That's it. Yeah, that's why I would play the under, if anything. Lloyd Vance, NFL writer, researcher, historian, PFWA award winner, and of course, ESPN NFL Network contributor, Black College Football Hall of Fame Selection Committee, and joins us every week on BYP throughout the offseason and, of course, the NFL season. So it kicks off Thursday night. We've got one more division in play. That would be the NFC East. We'll go heavy with that. Then we'll start to take a look at some of the odds for divisional winners coming out of the conferences, respectively, Super Bowl, and we'll make our official on the record predictions before we'll do probably about 2 or 3 days before week 1, and we'll start to look at some of these games and some of these lines. But as always, great stuff, my friend. Always appreciate you jumping on BYP.
Thanks for having me on.